Let's go! So, LSU recruiting has been phenomenal this offseason, especially with a brand new staff. And as we move closer to the season on this channel, we won't be talking too much recruiting, obviously outside of a few commitments here or there. But obviously on this channel, we're going to be focusing more on actual team stuff, which actually excites me a lot. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a recruiting overview and really focus in on the state of Louisiana. These are uncommitted four-star players right now in the state. I left out a few here or there that I don't think LSU will actually pursue or even come close to landing, but there is one little surprise here at the end. So starting off here with Khai Prean, I've heard it also pronounced Khai Prean, a really talented wide receiver, just transferred to St. James. Obviously LSU's got 2 wide receiver commitments already lined up for 2023. As of right now, you should like LSU's chances if you look at the On3 recruiting prediction machine. About 50-50 with Auburn, but Khai Prean was one of the many hashtags that all the players were basically putting out there for LSU to go land. So for those that don't follow the day-to-day recruiting, there have been different hashtags for different prospects in this class for LSU to go out there and just push them to committing. It's been very interesting, and it's not just other recruits committed like a Jackson Howard and Jaylen Brown doing it. It's also some current players doing the same thing. So Khai Prean looking pretty good, and they did get the hashtag movement going. The same thing for Tyree Adams, a really talented 4-star St. Aug offensive lineman. I feel really good about this one, and you should as well. Obviously, LSU has really ate up St. Aug over the years. Obviously, Leonard Fournette being the most famous example, and the coaching staff is filled with former St. Aug players as well. So very interesting high school. There are some younger prospects in the pipeline for St. Aug as well. So LSU looking pretty good for Tyree Adams at the moment. We move on to Kylin Jackson, really talented safety out of Zachary, Louisiana. Lots of really good players come out of Zachary. Obviously, Chris Hilton, if you want a deeper cut. Zach Van Rosenberg also out of Zachary. And obviously, Eli Holstein, who's also a part of the 2023 cycle, a quarterback that is currently committed to Alabama. Kylin Jackson, chances still look pretty good for LSU. I know Texas A&M is very much in it, as could be some other SEC schools. Remember, LSU is pretty stacked up at safety right now, which leads us, to me, to the most interesting uncommitted safety in the state of Louisiana. Boom, I'm looking at you. Before we get to him, please hit the subscribe button, like button, all that good stuff. We hope you check out the PHL Patreon as well. And that young man is Jordan Matthews. He is more of a corner, honestly, but it's very interesting. It's a lot like Kylin Jackson. He also has a talented 4-star quarterback in Ricky Collins that is currently committed to Purdue. So could I see both Kylin Jackson and Jordan Matthews potentially leaving the state? I mean, look, LSU has a loaded defensive back class right now, including Ashton Stamps out of the state of Louisiana. But it would be very interesting if LSU didn't end up landing any of the elite in-state defensive backs in this class. As of right now, Texas looks to be in the lead according to the On3 recruiting prediction machine. So we shall see what happens with Jordan Matthews. We move along here to Jaiden Ausberry. Obviously, the connections here, his dad, Verge Ausberry, has been a longtime administrator at LSU. Jaiden's brother went to Auburn last year, so this could be another example of an Ausberry leading the state. Notre Dame currently leading the way here. What's very interesting, obviously, Jaiden Ausberry goes to U High, which is quite literally on LSU's campus. Jacqueline Roy also a U High grad, so very interesting if none of the Ausberries actually end up picking LSU. Move along here to, obviously, the big guys here. Zalance Heard, 6'5", 300-pound offensive lineman. We've talked a lot about Zalance on this channel. I feel really good about LSU landing him. Obviously, His good friend and teammate Will Campbell on the LSU Tigers right now was an elite offensive lineman. It is very interesting that On3 has him rated way higher than everybody else. And obviously, if you're 6'5", 305, and you're really athletic like Zalance Heard, obviously a guy that played a lot of defensive line to start out his career, you could see why a lot of people are in love with them. So I do feel pretty good about LSU landing him as well. And then we get to the big guy, my number one player in the state of Louisiana. That is Shelton Sampson Jr., 6'4", 180, 5-star wide receiver. And I really do feel especially spectacular about LSU landing him. Obviously, look at the senior stats from last year: 40 catches, 932 yards. Catholic High, also in Baton Rouge, was a very run-heavy team last year. So the fact that, he was still able to get 932 yards, which is a lot in high school, it's really, really good. So I'm really high on Shelton Sampson Jr. I do think he is a truly special wide receiver, and I think he's got a really high floor. I see him being no less than a Terrence Tolliver level player, and Terrence Tolliver was really, really good at LSU. Now, this is where you come for a little extra spice, okay? We were just focusing today on uncommitted Louisiana prospects, right? Marjavis Moss is another 4-star that I'm very interested in, another Northern Louisiana defensive back. We didn't talk a whole lot about him today, but, we talked a lot about a few other DBs in this cycle. It was interesting. You could go see Shelton Sampson lined up against Jordan Matthews some. You love seeing that really good on really good matchup. But there is one defensive back that is currently committed to another school that I want to spend some time on, and that is Derek Williams, okay? Now, if I were to rank the state of Louisiana prospects, Shelton Sampson would be 1, and Derek Williams would probably be number 2. He's a really, really talented safety. And look, LSU, they look like they're out of it. But there has been a strong push to get LSU back in the running here with Derek Williams. Obviously, he's committed to Texas. I think Derek Williams and Shelton Sampson, for me, the recruiting rankings actually do back it up for both of them. They are really good players, future All-SEC guys. So you really want those guys to play on your team and not against SEC rivals. Obviously, Texas not quite in the SEC just yet, but you get the picture, right? For me, I feel as if LSU's defensive back class is already really good, right? You had Dalen Austin, you got Ryan Yates, got Ashton Stamps, got Michael Doherty, you got a lot of guys. You already got one lined up for 2024 as well. But this is just a case where I feel this guy's just better. And a lot of it is due to just his overall athleticism. I think he's a box-to-box, sideline-to-sideline safety. More of a box guy, but to me, he's just a very special football player. So, I think LSU could legitimately get back into it here? I do. And I feel as if it's not that Derek Williams didn't like LSU. I've heard of him making visits to Baton Rouge on his own accord. And obviously, if you're in Westgate, New Iberia, it's not that far from Baton Rouge. But, he has visited LSU's campus enough for me to say this guy is very interested in playing at LSU. And the bottom line is you just give Texas a lot of credit. I mean, their staff has done a really good job recruiting Louisiana just over the years. And obviously this year with Arch Manning and Will Randall committed to Texas in this cycle also from the state of Louisiana. So for me, I don't think this is over, though. I really don't. I think Derek Williams could potentially be back with LSU. Or he never was committed to LSU, but he could be back into the discussion for LSU. Now, remember this, and I've always said this about commitments. There is no such thing as must-get recruits. They don't exist, right? However, there are some players that really, really help your chances of winning, and this guy is one of them. So we know about Westgate's connection to LSU. Obviously, Kayshawn is from Westgate. We also know about Corey Raymond And there have been some good Westgate players that have played at LSU. Josh Jurasic, Josh Butte, and so on and so on. So let's give you a little insight here at the end. Now, you guys know with recruiting, when they're going to announce, so on and so on. I don't try and get too much into it because so much changes. We saw a big 4-star prospect do this huge announcement ceremony, and he didn't even end up announcing. Like, there are so many different factors that go into when you're actually going to verbally say that you're committed, and obviously we don't know anything until pen is signed to paper anyway. So none of it's official. These are all verbal, non-binding agreements. It's always important to do that and keep that in mind, especially when it's teenagers. However, for Shelton Sampson and Zalance Heard, I do think both of them make their announcements at some point before their senior season begins. Now, for the rest of them, I feel as if you are going to see a lot of commitments be announced before the start of the season begins. And this is actually something that I thought would be very interesting when it comes to recruiting. I thought for sure that because of name, image, and likeness, there were going to be a lot of recruits that don't commit as soon, and that simply just has not been the case. Of the top 100 players, 67 of them have already committed, and what's very interesting about that is only 23 of the top 100 is committed to SEC schools. So what's very interesting, and obviously with Derek Williams, Texas, even though they're not in the SEC just yet, they're an out-of-conference school. A lot of schools out of conference, Miami, Penn State, Notre Dame, they've all done a really good job as far as recruiting players this cycle. So it is a very wild marketplace, but I do think we've seen over the years that a lot can change. So just make sure you keep that in mind. But I do feel for a lot of the players you saw today, I would probably say 90% of them are going to announce before the season begins. Let me know what you think down below. Who is the guy for you? The must-get, gotta-have kind of guy? Please let me know in the comments section below. It is Power Hour LSU. Bam! And tonight we are doing pizza. Let's go.